What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another review, and this time we're taking a look at the 1923 adaptation of Victor Hugo's novel, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, starring Lon Chaney Sr., the man of a thousand faces. Let's waste no time, let's get right into it. Overall, I think The Hunchback of Notre Dame is an overall decent horror drama. Yeah, I am not a big fan of the original Hunchback of Notre Dame movie. Despite the positives, I think this movie is riddled with a lot of negatives, and I just find this movie to be overall just okay. I think it's just overly long and dull and boring in a lot of areas, but this movie is saved, to me, it's saved by an outstanding performance of Lon Chaney Sr. as Quasimodo. This was pretty much Lon Chaney Sr.'s breakout role, as playing Quasimodo, the bell ringer of Notre Dame, the deformed man who is peaceful at heart. Yeah, Chaney Sr. as the character is outstanding. It's legendary. Lon Chaney Sr. was in his lifetime, like over 100 years ago. He was pretty much one of the shining stars of Hollywood during the silent era, and a lot of that has to do with his ability to be as a makeup artist. The makeups that he would use for a lot of his characters are legendary and stick out. But what really put Lon Chaney as one of the best was that he was a very good pantomime artist, and he brought that ability into his acting. And Quasimodo is a fantastic showcase character as to the talents of Lon Chaney Sr., as to how good he was with his body posturing, his body movements, the way he can emote, and just the little nuances he gave the character of Quasimodo from an actual performance standpoint is fantastic. From an overall makeup standpoint, he does a fantastic job of making Quasimodo look just grotesque and just horrific looking. But he's a monstrous looking person with a soul and with a heart, and you really see that in Chaney's performance. Like I said, Chaney is the star of this movie. A lot of the best scenes and moments are with Quasimodo. So yeah, that's a big positive for me. The supporting cast that surrounds Chaney, they do a good job to themselves. I think the actress named Patsy Ruth Miller plays Esmeralda, the love interest. I thought she was fine in the role. I like how Quasimodo is in love with this woman, kind of like the Disney version who is in love with the Esmeralda in that movie. It's the same thing here. You know, Quasimodo, he has this infatuation with Esmeralda, but Esmeralda likes Quasimodo, but in the sense that you pity someone in a way. And you see that in this movie as well. Esmeralda's main love interest is the character of Phoebus, played in this film by famed silent actor Norman Kerry. Kerry as the character of Phoebus, I thought he was fine. The scenes with the scenes of Phoebus and Esmeralda, I thought they played pretty decently. Brendan Hurst, who plays John, who is kind of like the villain of the piece and the mentor figure to Quasimodo. Brendan Hurst comes across as a archetypal villain in this movie. You know, very over the top, very theatric, very just in your face with them as to how cartoonish his villainous character can be. You know, it's okay. It's not a bad performance. It's an unintentionally funny performance when you watch the film. Then you have the character of Clopan, who is the king of the Court of Miracles and leads the beggars of France. And you know, his stuff is all right. You know, the best part of Clopan is the third act of this movie, when the Court of Miracles raid the Paris Cathedral in the revolt. That's pretty much Clopan's biggest thing in this movie, to me at least. In terms of this movie's actual production design, this is the second best thing about this movie. This movie looked absolutely phenomenal. This movie was filmed in the Universal backlot, and the recreation of 1982's Paris Cathedral is outstanding. It looks massive in scope, and it looks vividly detailed. Like Universal during this time, they really went out of their way to create 1940s France, 1480s France to the best of their abilities, and I thought they did a fantastic job. The overall look of the cathedral is outstanding. The overall wardrobe and costume designs, to me, they look that they're of the period. Like, this is a beautiful looking movie from an overall art direction and set design. I had no complaints with that whatsoever. It looks fantastic. But my biggest gripes with this movie is the overall pacing and the fact that this movie goes on for 2 hours, and it feels like it goes on longer. Like, this is a very sluggish movie to sit through. At least for me, that is. Maybe someone else could watch this movie and not feel that way, but for me, This movie felt sluggish. I didn't feel myself to be all that engaged in a lot of areas, and I think there are certain scenes that drag on longer than they should, and I think the main plot kind of gets disrupted with certain elements that don't need to be in this movie. Like, you can cut a half hour out of this movie, and I don't think you would really lose much. If anything, I think the movie would have had a much more nicer flow to it, and you could have got to everything at a much quicker pace. I think this movie just drags on longer than it should, and for the story that it's telling, it doesn't really need to be no more than an hour and a half. This movie did not need to be 2 hours. And I don't mind movies that go 2 hours or over 2 hours as long as the story you're telling dictates it. This movie's story did not dictate a 2 hour runtime. It just, to me, it feels like a slug to sit through. And that's an overall shame, because the overall fundamental elements that this movie does present are fantastic. Very good performances. A outstanding performance by Lon Chaney Sr. A solid supporting cast, awesome art direction, set design, and wardrobe design, and an overall story that is actually really, really good, and characters that you really like and appreciate. It's just the pacing and the sluggishness of it. It really brings this movie down a lot, for me at least. And there are some actors who kind of go a little bit too hammy and out of control, and a lot of their a lot of the nuances in their performances can get undermined by just how cartoony that their performances can be. That also brings the film down immensely as well. But with all that being said, I do appreciate The Hunchback of Notre Dame. This movie is close to being 100 years old, and you can clearly tell that it's influenced a lot of cinema within its time. And this really is a landmark movie just overall. So with all that taken into account, I'm going to give The Hunchback of Notre Dame a solid 6.5 out of 10. I do not hate this movie. I think it's overall okay. So yeah, those are my thoughts on The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Let me know yours in the comment sections down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.